Hello everybody and welcome back to another not applicable Formula 1 video. I hope that you're well. I hope you've enjoyed not only the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix but the Formula 1 2021 season. It has come to a close and there we have it. Max Verstappen is your 2021 World Drivers' Champion. And before we go into the details of the race and before we go into the details of the championship and so on, what a season we have had. What an incredible year of racing. And you know what? Max Verstappen probably deserves it more than anybody else. It was very, very close between the two of them going into the final race. They were on equal points. Don't know if anyone had mentioned they were on equal points, but they're on equal points going into this race. And you know what? Both of them deserved it overall. And Max Verstappen, a worthy winner. He's won more races than anybody else. He's led more laps than anybody else. And he's been top of the standings more often than anybody else this season. And a worthy champion, a wonderful champion to sort of lead us into this next era of Formula 1. The start of the 2022 season does bring in all of the changes, all of the new regulations, and of course the likes of George Russell, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, all in top teams with Max Verstappen at the helm as well in the Red Bull. You know, this new era of driver, the next era of driver coming through, and Max Verstappen, you know, sort of personifies that and has won his first World Drivers' Championship. And you know what? I'm really, really looking forward to 2022 now and what is going to happen with those drivers towards the top and what those new teams can do. But we do have to talk about Abu Dhabi itself. The race that happened this afternoon for me, probably yesterday afternoon for you guys by the time this gets edited and put out. And the first lap, it looked like it was going to be Lewis Hamilton all the way. Lewis Hamilton gets ahead into the first corner. A really lightning start from the British driver. And Max Verstappen looked like he was standing still. Like, it was genuinely mind-boggling. Lewis Hamilton, first thing, gets into the first corner ahead of Max Verstappen. And then the thing we do need to discuss a little bit, I guess, is the move that Max Verstappen then makes on Lewis Hamilton. So Lewis Hamilton gets ahead, round through the first few corners into the second sector and down that first DRS straight. Obviously, because it's the first lap of the Grand Prix, there is no DRS. But with the slipstream, with the medium compound tyre on Lewis Hamilton's car, the soft compound tyre on Max Verstappen's car, Max Verstappen is able to sort of put together a little bit of a move down in towards turn 6. That then forces Lewis Hamilton wide. And for me, it's such a 50-50. It does feel like a bit of a racing incident. You know, the gap is there for Max Verstappen to go into, especially on those softer tyres. And he knows how important it is that he gets that lead as early as he possibly can on those soft compound tyres. And for me, though, I think the FIA did the right thing. And I think that's maybe the only time I'm going to say that in this video. I think the FIA did the right thing. I think Max Verstappen does force Lewis Hamilton off of his racing line. Max Verstappen obviously pushes Lewis Hamilton then off of the track. Yes, Max Verstappen is able to keep it within the white lines, but Lewis Hamilton does use that runoff area and keeps the position ahead of Max Verstappen. I think personally Max Verstappen was a little bit over the edge there, and therefore Lewis Hamilton should keep that first place through that corner. But Lewis Hamilton gains a massive advantage by being able to basically go flat out across the runoff area. And apparently he gave that back to Max Verstappen. How we judge that, I will never ever know. Like, did Max Verstappen get back into within the same sort of realms he was of Lewis Hamilton? That was what the FIA said. Whether that really happened, I'm not so sure. But you know what? Lewis Hamilton was in the lead and it was a good race for Lewis Hamilton from that point. He looked absolutely phenomenal. You know, we've seen it in the last 3 races that Lewis Hamilton, when given the opportunity, can just turn it on. And into the first pit stops, looked really, really quick. Then we had Sergio Perez enter the mix for the first time in this Grand Prix. And everybody was talking about, you know, the teammates and whether Valtteri Bottas would be able to cause problems for Max Verstappen. It ended up being Sergio Perez, the man causing problems for Mercedes. And what a problem he was. I'm so impressed with Sergio Perez, by the way. He was so amazing to watch in that sort of 3 or 4 laps where Lewis Hamilton was gaining and gaining and gaining, and then Sergio Perez used all of the track to all of his advantage. They went wheel to wheel, and then Max Verstappen, obviously is on the radio to Red Bull asking Sergio, what's happening? Sergio Perez, though, just focused completely on ruining Lewis Hamilton's race as much as he possibly can, dives down the inside into turn 9, makes a wonderful move, and as I said, I was so impressed with Sergio Perez. Like, if Sergio Perez hadn't have made those moves and hadn't have made 5 seconds up for Max Verstappen, like, the race is over and done with completely at that point. Lewis Hamilton just drives off into the distance and wins this Grand Prix easily. But Sergio Perez, wow. 5 seconds is a lot of seconds. And the fact that, through that hotel section, he was just parking it on every single apex. I loved it. I loved the shithousery of Sergio Perez. It was really, really good. But then, even with that, Lewis Hamilton looked like he was going to go on to win this Grand Prix. He was too quick, even through the virtual safety car where Max Verstappen was able to get a free pit stop. He still looked incredibly quick compared to everybody else in this Grand Prix. Still was, 12, 11 seconds ahead of his title rival, and it was looking further and further away from happening for Max Verstappen. But then, one final twist. It's 2021. When something looks obvious, it looks like Lewis Hamilton's just going to drive off. 10 laps left to go. 8 times World Drivers' Championship winner. And of course, no. Nicholas Latifi has other ideas. Latifi hits into the wall and chaos ensues. It was just, the perfect sort of representation of what this season has been in 2021. Because Nicholas Latifi hitting the wall, and the FIA goes into bedlam. The grid goes into bedlam. The pit walls go into bedlam. It is just absolute shambolic nature all over the grid for the last 5 laps of this Grand Prix. And everyone and nobody knows what is going to happen. It's just, it was crazy. I can't put it into words. It was just the most 2021 thing to happen and the most 2021 way to end this up and down championship. And there are actually so many things that happen. First, Max Verstappen gets the opportunity to pit again, put on soft compound tyres for the last few laps of this Grand Prix. Hamilton, of course, has to stay out because there's no way of knowing. Everyone's saying, Lewis Hamilton should have just pitted under the safety car. There's no way you can know whether or not that is the correct decision, because if the entire Grand Prix finished under the safety car, we didn't have any more laps of racing, then Lewis Hamilton loses because he pitted under the safety car. If, he doesn't pit under the safety car, what we've seen happens, and he is on a massively, old set of hard compound tyres when Max Verstappen's able to put basically a fresh set of softs on. And then, there was all the incident with the safety car and the back markers between the title rivals. So it was Lewis Hamilton behind the safety car, and then there was Norris, Alonso, Ocon, Leclerc, and Vettel between Hamilton and Verstappen. So 5 back markers, 5 lapped cars between the 2 title rivals. And at first, we were given the, the go-ahead that under the safety car, normally what happens is the back markers are allowed to unlap themselves. Then we're told on the radio that actually that is not going to be the case this time around. They're more concerned about getting the track clear and obviously getting Nicholas Latifi's car out of the way and making sure everybody is as safe as possible. Then they go back on that again and decide with 2 laps left to go, the cars are allowed to unlap themselves, but only those 5 cars. The cars that are further back behind Max Verstappen are not allowed to unlap themselves. So it's only the 5 cars between the 2 championship rivals. And that is where, this is just stupid from the FIA. It seems like a really weird decision. It looks like they're making these decisions on a coin flip because they changed their mind 2 or 3 times in the course of the safety car. And, obviously, as I said, if Nicholas Latifi doesn't hit the wall, none of this happens. And the FIA have a fairly good day at the office. Now it looks like they've made an absolute shambles of this final race, and it's going to go down in history as one of those races that the FIA ruined again this season. And we've said that quite a few times this season, and I think, we do need to put the FIA under a bit of scrutiny, because as soon as the safety car comes in with 1 lap to go, well, first of all, it's not allowed to come in with that 1 lap to go. Technically, if cars overtake under the safety car, the lapped cars overtake, they should be given 1 full lap to catch up again to the back of the pack, which they weren't given because the safety car is given the go-ahead with, half a lap after those cars have been given those places back. So it just seems strange. And then the safety car does come in, and at that point Lewis Hamilton is a sitting duck. Like, there's no way he's going to be able to put any kind of battle together with Max Verstappen on soft compound tyres. He does as best as he possibly can, going through turn 5, he tries to, come back on the inside, and then down into turn 6 and down into turn 9. Again, he has a little look up the inside of Max Verstappen, but was never going to happen. And Max Verstappen takes the lead of this Grand Prix, becomes a World Drivers' Champion for the first time in his career. And I'm sure there are many, many more to come. But it was sort of, tainted just slightly by the FIA's decision, by that safety car, and by the fact that Lewis Hamilton had that Drivers' Championship snapped out from underneath him. And because it was snapped out from underneath him, we have got 2 protests from Mercedes coming through. The first of all, the outcome of the race and the safety car decisions. They have, questioned the stewards and the FIA on those decisions. And secondarily, for Max Verstappen overtaking under the safety car. And this is not something that I saw, but when the safety car is confirmed to come in, obviously Lewis Hamilton drops off the back of the safety car to give him some room to warm up his tyres. Max Verstappen is now the car behind Lewis Hamilton because all of the lapped cars have gone through. And Max Verstappen obviously is trying to keep, pace with Lewis Hamilton, but also keep warmth in his tyres. Lewis Hamilton trying to slow down both of those drivers as much as he possibly can. And for a split second, and I'm talking like a margin of a second, Max Verstappen does actually jut his front wing in front of the Mercedes car through the first couple of corners in the hotel section. So he is technically ahead of Lewis Hamilton, and Mercedes have said he was in front of him, he overtook on the safety car, and should end up with a 5-second penalty. Whether or not that will come to fruition, we do not know. But it was a real shame that it had to end like this. The results speak for itself. Verstappen wins the race, wins the World Drivers' Championship. Hamilton does come home in second, and it's just a shame, really. We wanted the battle to go down to the wire. Everybody wanted this battle to go all the way to the final race of the season, which it then did. But the FIA this year have just been an absolute joke. They've been so inconsistent on so many levels, and drivers have said it throughout the season. We had Alonso talking about first laps and overtakes, then, running off the racing line. We've had Verstappen and Hamilton going head-to-head in the FIA's room all of the time over the second half of the season. We've had so many incidents, and so many incidents that have just been like, it's one rule for one driver, another rule for another driver. And I know Michael Massey is learning on the job, but it's the pinnacle of motorsport. It is the biggest stage, and for it to end in this way just felt a little bit silly. I know that they want the best narrative for Formula One, but it does feel like throughout the season, and especially in these last 3 or 4 races, they've chased the narrative more than they've chased being, a consistent FIA and stewards room. They've chased the fact that they wanted a big finale for the season. They wanted to go out with a bang, both drivers on equal points. It seems like they've chased that more than they've chased actually being consistent, actually, abiding by the rules as they're written, and being a consistent and sporting regulatory body, which is what they are there to be. And it's undecided at the checkered flag. We don't want it to be undecided at the checkered flag. We wish that Max Verstappen will be celebrating now, and Lewis Hamilton will be absolutely gutted. But in 4 or 5 weeks' time, it could all turn around again, because Mercedes, as I said, are putting together lots and lots of cases for them to go to the stewards and possibly their legal teams, going further into the future about this race. And as much as I wish this was the end result and this is how it's going to be, we're going to have to wait a little while to see how that goes. I waited as long as I could. It's now midnight here in the UK, and I was like, I'm going to have to record this video now, because otherwise it's just not going to go out. And you guys deserve the video to come out, because you guys have been absolutely wonderful throughout the season. Shall we talk about the rest of the grid? Because there were 18 other drivers on the grid. As much as the last few races I've talked consistently about Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, there were other drivers. The main other driver I want to talk about is Carlos bloody Sainz, my driver of the day, personally. I know that Kimi Räikkönen won driver of the day in the vote, but wow, another podium position. Yes, it probably would have gone Sergio Perez if he didn't retire towards the end of the race. But Carlos Sainz is the smoothest of operators, and I was so gutted to see him go from McLaren. As you know, a McLaren fan, and him and Lando Norris, that rivalry that they had, that friendly banter that they had as well, and the bromance that sort of blossomed while they were at McLaren was amazing. I was so sad to see him go because he is such a good driver, and he just shows it again this season. Absolutely phenomenal. I'm even going to pop up the Drivers' Championship standings because Carlos Sainz did come out on top, ahead of Lando Norris, ahead of Charles Leclerc in his first season at Ferrari. Norris has been at McLaren for a little while now. Charles Leclerc was Mr. Ferrari. They put all of the hopes in Ferrari and Charles Leclerc. And yet the Spaniard comes out on top, 4.5 points ahead of Norris and 5.5 points ahead of Charles Leclerc. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. Going to have a video coming out on Ferrari and what I think they'll do next season coming up very soon. Then we moved on to AlphaTauri, who also had a wonderful weekend. Gasly actually did have a pretty poor qualifying. Yuki Tsunoda had a wonderful weekend, and both AlphaTauris ending up really solidly in the points, 4th and 5th for them. But yeah, Yuki Tsunoda, wow, really showed finally what we've been waiting for, and a great afternoon for the team. Unfortunately, they did eventually finish behind Alpine in the Constructors' Championship, but that was kind of the way it went. Alpine were very consistent over the course of the year. Talking about consistency, Valtteri Bottas finishes Mercedes' career with a 6th place finish, a 3rd place in the Drivers' Championship, and winning the Constructors' Championship for Mercedes as well. So, he did his job. Valtteri Bottas concludes his career with Mercedes, 5 consecutive Constructors' Championships, 8 in total for Mercedes with that Rosberg era in there as well. And, he can leave the paddock. Not leave the paddock. He can leave the team with his head held high. We will see him next year on the paddock at Alfa Romeo. But, he did good. And I've been very critical of Valtteri Bottas. I've not been his biggest fan. But in hindsight, looking at his 5 years at Mercedes, he's been the perfect teammate for Lewis Hamilton. He's always done the best that he possibly can for the team. And Mercedes will miss him. I think, George Russell coming into the team, it's going to be a steep learning curve for him. And maybe a few Mercedes fans will, for the first few races at least, maybe miss Valtteri Bottas for a little while. Lando Norris! Why? Why Lando Norris is the most just unlucky driver in the world? Another puncture for the British driver. Another really unlucky afternoon when it looked like he was on for a great result again. I just don't know what it's been since Russia. Obviously, we had that unlucky incident in Russia. Let's not talk about it. I don't want to cry. But we had that unlucky incident in Russia. And then from then, everything has just gone wrong for McLaren. And Lando Norris has just been completely budged out of this championship. Remember, he was going into the summer break in 3rd place. Now, holding on to 3rd was going to be almost impossible. Valtteri Bottas, Sergio Perez were going to improve in the second half of the season, but I was hoping that he could hold on to 5th place as much as he possibly could, and he was holding on to 5th place for the majority of this race. Then gets a puncture, then the safety cars really don't go his way, and just gutted for him that he doesn't finish in 5th place. Really happy for Carlos Sainz, but also equally gutted for Lando Norris and McLaren, to be fair, finishing way behind Ferrari in the end in the Constructors' Championship. Daniel Ricciardo didn't have a great year in McLaren either. We can maybe sort of point towards that, but both of the Ferrari drivers right up there with Lando Norris and Ricciardo, quite a considerable amount behind. Then we had the Alpines just behind Lando Norris, and wow, what a season they've had. Had a pretty quiet sort of season, really. I think Alpine's one of those teams I haven't, kept on the radar of throughout the entire season. But when I was going back and watching some of the highlights from the earlier races this season, very impressed with the Alpine drivers, coming in 10th and 11th respectively. Alonso just ahead of Ocon by 7 points. Ocon won a race this year, by the way, and had a 4th place last time out. Ocon's had a great season. Alonso's had a great season. Alpine look great. Alpine look really good. I love the team dynamic that they've got going on at the moment. I love the fact that Alonso and Ocon are just willing to absolutely battle to the hill to each other. And the emphasis, what can they do next year? I'm very excited to see Alpine. It wasn't one of the teams I was very excited to see how they do in 2022, maybe, like 5 races ago. All of a sudden, I'm in. I'm involved in L Plan. I want to see what's going to happen with Alonso and Ocon moving forward. Aston Martin had a bit of a... Charles Leclerc, in there as well, in 10th place. Bit gutted for Charles Leclerc, to be honest with you. Ended up 7th place in the Drivers' Championship. Obviously came into the race today in 5th. And has been so consistent, has lacked, the podium finishes of Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris. But if anything, that just shows how good he has been in consistently getting points, 4th through 6th. Charles Leclerc is pretty much always there. He does consistently pick up those points for Ferrari. And, Carlos Sainz and Norris getting ahead of him just at the end. A bit disappointing for him to finish in 10th overall, but lost out massively due to the virtual safety car. Was horrible on his second stint of tyres. And, yeah, it just all fell apart from there. Aston Martin is the next team I was going to have a little chat about. Really poor from them. Just expected a little bit more this season. And I think 11th and 13th kind of papers over the cracks a little bit, because they wouldn't have been had Sergio Perez, Nicholas Latifi, Giovinazzi, Russell, Raikkonen all not retired from this race. Like, Aston Martin would have been way down there. And just, they really lacked some je ne sais quoi at sometimes this season. They really lacked, just something to push them on that little bit extra. Although they did win the overtaking championship with Sebastian Vettel, so they have got a million jelly beans headed their way. Kimi Raikkonen was his final race in Formula One, and gutted to see the Finn go out like that. He has been a wonderful driver to have on the grid. One of my favourite drivers for many, many years, and, a world champion in his own right as well. The last Ferrari world champion, let's not forget. And it was an awkward finish to his career. Obviously, his brakes failed a little bit, then bumped into the wall, and both Alfa Romeos ended up out of this Grand Prix anyway, so it was kind of a bit of a lackluster end to the season for both Giovinazzi and Kimi Raikkonen, neither of which will be on the grid next year. Shout out to Kubica as well, who technically finished 20th in the championship ahead of Nikita Mazepin. And Alfa Romeo just a bit meh this year. Obviously, 2 new drivers coming in, hopefully a bit more, bit more going on at Alfa Romeo next year. Nicholas Latifi and George Russell also retired from this race. Latifi causing, obviously, the chaos at the end. And George Russell, a bit of a damp ending to his Williams career. Has one eye on Mercedes, to be honest with you. And you can't blame him. He's kind of, as soon as that Mercedes deal came through, had a couple more good races and then, just slid into mediocrity at the back of the grid. But next year, we'll see what he can do in a Mercedes car. And Schumacher, a great 14th place finish. Obviously, all the cars behind him did not finish the race. But you've got to be there, you've got to do it, and you've got to keep it on track. And he did. Nikita Mazepin missed the race due to COVID. Wow. What a season we've had. I'll just pop up the Drivers' Championship one more time for you. Not too shabby, Alonso. The Constructors' Championship one more time for you. That is how it ended. And it ends with Max Verstappen lifting another trophy, 10 wins for him, and the most important win, that World Drivers' Championship. It's been the best season. It's been an amazing season of racing. Absolutely everything has happened. We've seen tears, we've seen crashes, we've seen everything in between. And again, congrats to Max Verstappen, and hopefully, the FIA get a full decision out for us as soon as possible, because he deserves to celebrate that World Championship, properly, knowing that it is confirmed and that going forward, he will have that championship in the bank for 2022 when anything could happen, seemingly. I want to thank you guys. I want to thank you guys for a wonderful season, making this channel a thing. I know that I've probably rambled on for a little bit longer than usual in this one, and thank you so much for watching. If you have watched to this point, comment grapes. There you go. I don't know why. I have a lot of videos planned, obviously, over the down season. We got 14 weeks until the start of the 2022 season. 14 weeks that I will be anxiously waiting to get back behind the microphone again and commentating for you guys. But as I said, lots of videos planned in the meantime, as well as streams over on Twitch. So get involved. If you're not following me on Twitch, links in the description down below. And also on the community tab, you can vote for your season awards. Who was your favorite driver? Who had the best livery, the best rookie of the year, all those good things. 10 different categories, and the awards will be out soon on the channel. So get your votes in as soon as possible. Thank you all so much. I got a little bit upset towards the end of the stream because it has been a wonderful season with you guys, and it's it's just been a dream come true. The fact that this channel has been able to become what it has in just a very, very short amount of time. And I'm hoping that we have bigger and better things moving forwards. And it is all thanks to you guys. You are the real driving force behind it. You give me life. The fact that I get to chat with you guys, you know, DMs from you guys all the time, just telling me how wonderful you think the channel is. And I don't know why, but you guys just make this wonderful. And yeah, I don't want to get upset again, so I'm going to leave it there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.